Jeny Mathis' Serenbe story began with a family Thanksgiving trip in 2013. Famously, at the end of the trip, she walked into the real estate office and burst into tears before she could even get a word out. You know, we interviewed Jeny's husband, Gil, on season 9 of Serenbe Stories and heard all about his personal transformation after discovering this community. And now it's Jeny's turn. For any Serenbe residents listening, Jeny Mathis hardly needs an introduction. But for anybody else, her impact on the community cannot be overstated. Jeny teaches yoga. She facilitates labyrinth walks, tutors students at the Terra School, organizes the community for causes dear to her heart, and so much, much more. We've been wanting to interview Jeny for quite some time, and we can't wait to share this episode of Serenbe Stories with you.
I don't even remember which agent spoke to me, but they mentioned The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. I had been a school teacher early in my life, taught special education, and was always reading about best practices and child development, and had already read that book. So it just, hit me right in the heart as if this matters to this place and it matters to me, I really feel a connection here.
Jeny, welcome to Serenbe Stories. How are you?
I am okay. I'm waking up every day, just one foot in front of the other, trying to be present.
I love it. Steve?
I can hardly wait until what new things we're going to hear from you. Usually you hear something we didn't even know. Now you and Gil have been here for a minute. So
we have been here for a minute. I was trying to think, our Serenbe story starts the same, but how is my perspective different than Gil's? So I tried to think about and re-listen to his podcast so that I could hear his perspective again and then add to that.
Okay, good. Because we've had Gil on and we've been wanting to have you on. And so you're I don't want to say this in front of Gil, but I'll say it in front of the better half of Gil. I mean, we love his spreadsheets.
I'm going to say I am the yang.
The yin.
Oh, the yin.
The yin. Okay, we'll fix that.
That's good.
I'm the yin to his yang.
Is it yang, not yang? Yin and yang?
Either tomato.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, I know. Pecan.
So if our listeners have not guessed, we're talking about a couple.
Yes, and we had her husband on, Gil, who many of you will have to go back and listen to. Not required before, but always good to compare notes. But you are already setting me up perfectly of what is your Serenbe story, Jeny?
Yes.
How did you get here? How did you find us?
So our Serenbe story starts with Thanksgiving vacation with Gil's side of the family. We were traveling and just trying to mix up that vacation, find something new, a little bit closer to our home, which was Atlanta at the time. And I taught yoga in Atlanta and polled my yoga students. And someone said, have you ever heard of Serenbe? And I had not.
Okay.
So I looked it up. I was intrigued. It really supports a yoga lifestyle, if you will. Being conscious, intentional, caring for the environment and sustainability, just really everything that is part of Serenbe was part of my worldview already. And so I asked the family, would they be interested in and or willing to come to Serenbe and try it out? And so we came. And at the time, the thing I really remember the most is there was not a strong internet signal here in 2013. And I was really worried about how the extended family was going to feel about maybe not being able to get the football games on.
Okay.
And so I have a nephew, father-in-law, brother-in-law, husband who are really into watching the sports. And anyway, it was acceptable. The sickness was acceptable. But we spent a lot of time engaging outdoors with nature and just really being with each other. You see what I did there?
Yeah, you did. That's nice.
And it really resonated with me. And watching our kids were 10 and 12 at the time, run around and just sort of be free and unstructured, which was highly important to me and really contrasted our life in Atlanta, where everything was scheduled and structured.
Yeah.
So I saw that freedom that they had.
So 2 questions. What part of Atlanta were you guys in?
At the time, we lived in Sandy Springs and our kids attended school in Buckhead.
Okay. And then when you guys came down, did you come for the week? You did end up booking a
So we came about
trip?
Wednesday to Sunday.
Perfect.
You know.
And so one of the community spaces maybe...
We stayed in Gwen and Pepper's townhome across from the Daisy.
Oh,
that was our first
that's
experience.
A beautiful space.
It was.
Yeah. I don't know if I think it's now owned by somebody. Yes. Part of our...
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. So after that, you went home. You were like, okay, it was a moment in time.
What really happened during that trip was me walking into the real estate office, which is a famous story in which I immediately just burst into tears. So what I can say about that is I don't even remember which agent spoke to me, but they mentioned The Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. I had been a school teacher early in my life, taught special education, and was always reading about best practices and child development, and had already read that book. So it just, hit me right in the heart as if this matters to this place and it matters to me, I really feel a connection here. And then I brought Gil back into the real estate office and he was intrigued. And this is where I can kind of set up the difference in me and Gil, or between me and Gil. I am a sensing, feeling person, and I know things because I feel them. Gil, on the other hand, is a rational, intellectual mind person and knows things when he thinks them or can rationalize them. And the fact that Gil was willing to come back to Serenbe and entertain the idea of potentially buying a second home here, I knew that Serenbe was already working its magic.
Okay. That's a good one. I like that. The yin and yang, as you're saying, like.
It truly is. And that's true of a lot of couples. And it isn't always the masculine and feminine. Sometimes it changes, the female person has the masculine.
Yeah.
Or, is more the rational.
Oh, right.
Because I guess when you find a partner, many times you're attracted to the opposite.
Exactly.
But then you'll absolutely, Gil is so much is in mind. I'm sure that drove you even more to your heart in relationships and things.
Well, what's so interesting about our story here and the evolution of Gil is...
Oh, that sounds like a book.
The evolution of Gil is that he has a feminine energy that was hidden and not able to fully be realized in the job that he had and the life that he was living in Atlanta. So he was in a very masculine corporate setting. He wasn't connected to the heart of what the work was that he was doing. And therefore, that part of him wasn't nurtured. And when he came here, he saw that that was possible. And that really sort of started...
You said you were going to cry.
I was going to cry.
I know, it's okay.
The evolution of Gil, which I'll wrap it up, that part up with a humorous story, which is we got to see that side of Gil on vacation. Yeah. And so we called that side of Gil Vacation Gil. And it was playful, and he's so creative. He's just one of the most creative. He's really, really funny. Like
we think he's funny.
He's super funny, but that doesn't always get to come out. And so when we would go on vacation as a family, we would see Vacation Gil. And we have a tradition on our birthdays that we go around the table and say what the growth is that we've seen in the person over the last year. And this year, as we went around the table, Davis said to Gil, "You are Vacation Gil all the time now."
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And Davis is one of your children, just for our listeners.
Yes.
So when you guys came back and you bought the second house, the kids were still in school up in Atlanta. So I know you guys did a little bit of back and forth over those years.
We did do a little bit. We did do a little bit of back and forth. And I can say that sort of my Serenbe story picks up there. It was a natural fit for me. No one would have questioned why I was interested in Serenbe. But I did not necessarily value the part of myself that was intuitive and empathetic, the part of myself that was so feeling, because it's not valued in society that much. But this is where Garney Nygrid comes in. And Garney gave me some courage and asked me to start really a business here. And I started a business in Serenbe called Zoetic, which means of or pertaining to life or living. So Zoetic was like a traveling yoga studio. And I partnered with the inn, and I would offer yoga, mindfulness, facilitate labyrinth walks with corporate groups and other groups that would come to Serenbe. And it was like a pop-up yoga studio. Yeah. I had a wagon and yoga mats and blocks and straps and singing bowls, etc., and got hired to really accept and nurture that part of myself. And that was very impactful. So I not only traveled back and forth on the weekends and on holidays with the family, but I came down during the week and was partnering with the inn and with Bamboo Juices. We had wellness weekends once a month for almost a year. Mm-hmm. And it was really impactful and really helped me nurture that part of myself.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about, and maybe not on the podcast, but Garni and I will talk about it. And I know you and I have talked about it, that Serenbe can sometimes be a mirror, that the place itself isn't, but the people are willing to hold a mirror up to you. And so you as an individual, in a very lovely way, then have to sort of face things and have accountability. And that also is not typical in typical communities or day-to-day society. And so that was something that, we've talked about for years. And I still think it's true. And I don't know if that was part of it, is that the people that you meet and run into, Garni and others, hold up a mirror. And some of that will come out in, I've always wanted to open this business. And now,
well, the thing is, I did not want to open a business.
Well, that's a different so Garni story.
But I didn't want to claim that part of myself. Mm-hmm. I kept it small-ish, if you will, and didn't see value, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And Garni really encouraged me to embrace that and how important it was. And it is here. It's valued here.
Yeah.
And so it was easy.
Yeah. I think if you want to do something and you're passionate and you really care, the community will rise up
100%.
You 100%. And it's really the only thing you have to have is a passion and authenticity.
That's right. I mean, if you look at nature, nature's real. You can't hide in nature. Nature functions. And when you're here, you're so based in nature that people tend to respond to their authentic self, is what you're seeing. And then it's sort of, when you encounter authentic people, seeing your authentic self in a different way, you feel it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I really, the way that Serenbe values, and I don't mean it's everything about Serenbe. It is the way it is designed. It is the energy here. It values masculine and feminine energy equally.
That's right.
And you can feel it.
And, you talked about what that experience did for you, but I know instances where that opened people that were visiting and that went through, had never walked a labyrinth and understood how to connect. So it was powerful for a lot of people.
And I know we're going into a whole different, but like you and I we've known each other since you've moved here, but you and I had a moment when there was a wellness retreat that was here, and it was Taryn Toomey's The Class. Somebody came and taught one, and it was such a moving experience for me personally, but you were there, and I was an absolute wreck afterwards, just like super opened up crying because it was such an emotional moment, but you were there to grab me, hold me, witness. Yeah. But the witnessing felt safe. And so there's something about here. And I always say that Steve set the table, kind of pun intended with hospitality, of the place, but it's the people and the intention that's set that really is the magic.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really nice that you shared that. So after you guys sort of did the back and forth, they've graduated from high school and they're now off in their own. Are they both out of college now? Or one is
a senior in college, and the other is now living in California.
But they're both in California right now. So once they sort of have flown, tell us a little bit, because you're one of those people that have moved throughout the community a couple times as well.
We are in our fifth home in Serenbe.
Crazy. That's crazy. So, it sounds, just for our listeners, that seems wild, but in a way, it's sort of.
I think what made that easier for us is we weren't moving our full home every time. Mm-hmm. We were moving our second home. Right. Less stuff, way less stuff. So that was easier to do that. You know, our first house was in the Crossroads, and it was just that's how we're diving in. We're moving into this first home. And then we were approached by you, Monica.
I forgot about that.
To build the first home in Motto.
Yep.
That was Rodale's Organic Life House. Uh-huh. And when we decided to do that, we sold the house we were living in and then rented just for the summer.
Right.
So that we could come down when the kids were out of school, and that house was being built. So before we got here full time, we were coming back and forth building that house, and Gil began working here as a real estate agent.
Right. Which is a whole kind of wild that he even went from being, I think he was the CFO of another company, but
not a CFO, but he was in investment services.
Okay, investment services. Mm-hmm. And so that's another thing, like half the time we don't quite know what people do. I'm like, I know you do something with money.
Right.
And so I don't know if he decided to sort of quote unquote retire at that point, or he just needed a break.
So it was a semi-retirement. Okay. He really wanted to transition out of a job that wasn't giving him life, and it was breaking him down. He wasn't Vacation Gil.
No.
And he really wanted to transition to something, and while the kids could see him do it, he didn't want to wait until they were gone. He wanted them to witness him taking control of and making a change intentionally. It was beautiful to watch.
That's really, really great. The house, you built a yoga studio and a labyrinth, a mini labyrinth in it. I remember just being fascinated because I think even at that time, 10 years ago, 8 years, when did we build that house? 8 years ago?
2016.
Oh my. Okay. So almost right? 10 years ago.
2016.
And this is early days of wellness, right? So even you starting the business, yoga was a thing, but maybe it was still a little bit out there. Like we think of meditation now, it's not 100% mainstream. People are doing it. And so when you decided to do a yoga studio in the house, I remember thinking, wow, that is a leap. So tell us about that, because it was beautiful space.
The house was built following the standards of something called wellness within your walls. So everyone that was part of the build of that house, from the architect, the builder, the designers, and us, and the landscape architects, we all took a class called Wellness Within Your Walls so that every aspect could represent how you could live well in a home. So it's not just what you eat, or that you compost, or that you do very basic things, but it's how do you bring the outdoors in? How do you elevate the ceilings in the home so that it feels like you have more space than you actually do? And there were so many things that I learned through that build process. And having a yoga studio as part of the home was a piece of that for me. That is one of my practices, is yoga.
And you were teaching out of it.
Correct,
too.
I was. And there wasn't a yoga studio here. The One Motto building wasn't built. There was kind of a pop-up yoga studio in Selborne in which I taught as well. So it was a lovely start to sort of a real space for yoga in the community.
Yeah. And you might even say that it was based on biophilic design, which is a now more common terminology. But that space was the first time I took an aerial yoga class. So talk about aerial yoga, which we do have in the yoga studio in the One Motto building.
At Serenbe Yoga. Yes.
That's also, I encourage anybody to go, if you've never taken aerial yoga, it sounds strange. It is, I don't know if I'm talking to our producer now, if Katrina's done it, Steve, you probably, that is like an emotional experience.
It is. So the hammock is used as a piece of equipment to just allow you to get into poses and postures in ways that you might not typically be able to. So going into an inversion, going upside down, doing that on your hands or your head, you can't stay for very long. But when you have the support of a hammock, you can hang upside down for a much longer period of time. It also feels, when you're lying in it for a pose such as Shavasana, you can really feel supported and hugged. And it's like being in the womb, if you will. And it's just a playful way to practice yoga. For people who have a mat practice, you can kind of get in a stagnant place in a mat practice. And so just doing yoga in a different way, using the hammock as a piece of equipment and a support, can just change it up for you and make it more fun, playful.
So besides the yoga labyrinth walks, you also teach during the warmer months. I think it just got completed. Aqua fitness.
I do teach aqua fitness.
Oh my God. Everybody's got to go do aqua fitness if you haven't done it, but you really need to move here, join the pool and take Jeny's class. Cause really, I don't know.
Yes. You have to be a pool club member.
How did that happen? So who talked you into that?
Well, so originally I was interested in teaching yoga in the pool. So I'm a certified aqua yoga teacher.
Okay.
And as I started teaching that, the community members also wanted to incorporate a little more cardio into that. So it is really a combination of cardio, fitness, and yoga. So we do about, 2/3 of the class are cardio, and then the last third is yoga. Yeah. That's really where that started. And it is the most fun, beautiful. We're in the sun, we're in the water. The water is supportive. It allows people who maybe have some physical limitations to access their bodies. And it's just an inner or a multi-generational situation, which is something that I really love.
And your playlists are amazing as well. But I think that's a great point. It's multi-generational, and it's also men and women. Like, you will see, you're like shocked by who comes to Aquafit. It's so fun because it's just a total cross section. Whatever idea you had in your head, it's not what it is. It's so fun.
Yes. And right now I have a core group that wants me to keep going. So the pool is heated, but the air outside, of course, is not. So it's getting colder, but the pool stays at 84. Yeah. So we're attempting to keep the classes going. We will doing it again this week. Okay. And we'll see how long. They're calling it sort of the polar Aquafit.
I like it. Like a Halloween version. We're recording this the day before Halloween. So I also know that you tutor, but I don't know much about that. You've been tutoring some kids.
I go into the Terra School and work with students because I was a special education teacher, kids that need some additional support, some one-on-one. I go in and do that.
That's amazing. Specific ages or all?
Typically, I'm working with Miss Audrey's class.
Okay. Another resident.
Yes, just because she knows me and has asked me to come in. So working on reading primarily.
Yeah. What else? What else is on the agenda here, Jeny?
So what else am I involved in Serenbe? I really have to speak to one of the most important things that I've been part of in Serenbe, which started during the pandemic. And it was a group called More Than a Moment that was actually started by the show's producer, Katrina Cohen. And she is one of my best friends. And it was a group really talking about anti-racism during that time. It was a group of neighbors. A majority of us were white, and we were getting together online almost weekly to grapple with and hold each other accountable to our biases. And one of the things that came out of that was something called the Public Black Art Project. Yeah. And it included it was the Public Black Art Project at Serenbe, and the installation of Curtis Patterson's Serenity for Shango, which is a permanent sculpture that is in the woods just to the right of the entrance of Serenbe as you pull in. And it's meant to be an enduring beacon of welcoming to the community. And I'm excited that there's a documentary that's been made about this. And so hopefully at the beginning of 2025, we will have a community viewing of this documentary so that everybody understands the significance of this sculpture.
No, I think that's a great point. We had Curtis on the podcast with beautiful, beautiful Gail O'Neill, who sadly is no longer with us. And it was a wonderful experience learning about it. So I encourage everybody to go listen. We can put that in the show notes. But I didn't know about the documentary. I knew some stuff was being filmed.
So it has been completed. Okay. We're doing some final edits, and then it will be up for viewing. And I just hope that everybody comes out so that it can really understand the significance of that sculpture.
Yeah. And I know that what do we call it, Steve? The art farm has then taken over public art. So that piece is now
for long-term maintenance, but,
yes. in their purview.
This purely came out of the community in a difficult period of time. Mm-hmm. And in the Black arts, and people not reacting in all sorts of different ways and perspectives. And I think it's such a interesting example of how you can reach people with art through their heart that you can never do through a logical conversation. And that's one of the best examples I cited so many times.
Mm-hmm. And for the listeners, it sits right about at the entrance to Serenbe, kind of near our stables, but in what has become another park area. And so you can go, and there is a box near it. It's a metal box that's beautiful. Then you can open that up and read about it and sort of what it stands for. But I agree, it's sometimes hard. We have so many wonderful, and Steve knows, pieces of art throughout Serenbe that we're trying to figure out the best way to sort of create wayfinding or educate people, or we kind of have a map. And so we're trying to figure out what that next step is to create awareness that people can go on a sort of public art tour.
Yeah. So this documentary literally documents from the very beginning of that through the installation.
Amazing.
And one of the most amazing things, as you mentioned, this was primarily white people talking to support and figure it out. Mm-hmm. As I remember, people of color were not interested in joining the conversation in the early days. And by the end of it, it was a very integrated committee that brought it forward. And
it was.
Just so many things happened in that journey.
Yeah, it was a difficult time. It's a sensitive topic even today. And so I think that it was taken on because it's, again, a little bit of back to the mirror, if you will, that we need to hold ourselves accountable, and then we need to hold our friends accountable, and then the community accountable, and be open. There was so much going on that to have grace and ask questions and be okay that maybe my question isn't the right question, but help me figure out how to ask the right question or use the right language.
And that's exactly what we were doing in that group, was really grappling with all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think today we still grapple with that in all sorts of areas. So I love that all that happened. So we'll look forward to that. And then now that Vacation Gill is Vacation Gill and Jeny is, I don't know, everything so fun, and you've blossomed into your own world, but what's next for you guys? Any fun next steps of more yoga, different houses? You built another house after you sold the last one. I mean, are you going to stay put there for a while?
I think we're going to stay put where we are. We now live on Lupo Loop. It's a beautiful lot that has both sunrise and sunset. But we're really enjoying this empty nest phase of our lives. I adore my kids and my time with them, but really solidifying my relationship with Gil and really enjoying what we call the college campus for adults that Serenbe can be. So it is a place where you can walk everywhere like a college campus. You have access to food. There are ways to sort of grow your mind and your heart if you want to. There's drinking. But if you're fortunate, you have a little more money than you did when you were in college so that you can partake in all of these things. We really love to go to almost anything that the art farm hosts and are amazed that people don't even know what's happening sometimes in terms of the art farm. But that is the thing that we, really are invested in and paying attention to. I'm actually on the theater council for the art farm, and my focus is poetry and bringing in poets, especially spoken word poets. Mm-hmm. And this year, hoping to have our beloved Sarah Kay return.
Yes. Yes. Wow, I was just talking to the art farm about that. She is amazing. And again, we'll put a link to her in the show notes. Phenomenal spoken word poet. And you guys have in the past supported spoken word poets to come to Serenbe. So it's exciting to think we can have more. It's one of my favorite events at the art farm's been doing is called Voice.
Yes.
And I missed it this fall. We were out of town, and it's usually a compilation of spoken word artists and or sort of comedians possibly, but anybody using their voice in an artistic way. So that's very exciting. So one of the last things we sort of ask is if somebody was coming to Serenbe, they don't know what to do, what would you advise them to do? Like, what should they go find or seek out if they're here for a day or a couple days?
So I think as you come to Serenbe, there are things, of course, I'm going to say the Labyrinth. I want you to go see Serenity for Shango. But just being open to creativity, to connection with community, you are going to stumble across or upon something that you just weren't expecting. And it's really these interactions that are the most impactful and just give this place the meaning that it has for me. I mean, you just never know. At Halloween a few years ago, we did a flash mob. So if you showed up and you were a visitor here at Halloween and you come to this event where everyone's in costume and then 25 or so people break into a Thriller flash mob, I mean, it's so fun.
It was magical. You know what? We have that video somewhere. We'll put that in the show notes. It was so magical to see that come together.
I'm a person who is always up for creativity, community, and connection. Mm-hmm. And if you call me up and ask me, I'll be game for whatever that thing is. And so Amy Mass, one of the great Serenbe connectors, called me and said, I've always wanted to be part of a flash mob. Can you help me? And I said, well, yes, I can. And so we secured places to practice. We had sort of hidden and secretive rehearsals in the evenings. We practiced once the sun went down in the street and then just performed this flash mob, and it was super fun.
It was amazing.
And what expectaits? I mean,
every year
everyone just looks around.
I was about to say, is it going to happen again this year?
Happen?
It's not. It's not going to happen. We cannot do the same thing again. It just wouldn't have the same effect.
Do maybe a Taylor Swift one or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
You know, one thing I love, and it's your playful, and it really is, of all places, you have the best porch in maybe all of Serenbe.
It's pretty good porch.
And then sometimes I can hear them laughing at what's happening on the trampoline because they're one of the few porches that has an eye-level view.
We do, and it is one of my favorite things to sit on my porch every morning. And in the afternoon, there will be people jumping on that trampoline. And it's just super joyful to sit out there and witness it.
Yeah.
And you see the child coming out of people of all ages.
Yes.
Which it seems so appropriate that you all are the witness of that happening on a regular basis.
I mean, it isn't just kids up there. I mean, it's everybody. It's really fun. Well, Jeny, thank you. I'm so glad we finally got you on. And I'm so glad that you have a vacation, Gil.
I do. Me too.
It's so wonderful that you've spoken from your heart, and I think that's going to come through. People can't see your tears, but I think they can hear them.
Oh, I'm sure they can. If you meet me, you'll also see my tears.
I love that about you. Thanks, Jeny, for being here.
You're welcome.
You.